Hello, I'm Caleb Elijah. I did my NHD project on Woodrow Keeble Wilson. The theme this year was breaking the barrier of diversity, and my project is Woodrow Keeble Wilson, the first Native American to receive the Medal of Honor. The title is Woodrow Keeble Wilson and How He Blew Down the Wall of Diversity in the Military. Woodrow Keeble Wilson was one of the best known military members of his time because of his actions that he had done for people that didn't respect him because of his ethnicity, that didn't honor him, didn't like him, but he didn't care enough about their prejudice and racism to fight them. Instead, he gave his life for them and was nominated twice for the Medal of Honor, which got lost both times because of suspected racism, prejudice, and injustice. Woodrow Keeble was born in Waubay, South Dakota, May 16, 1917, to Nancy Keeble and Isaac Keeble. He moved to Wahpeton, North Dakota at an early age and enrolled in the Wahpeton Indian School District. He was a full-blooded member of the Sioux, and his parents both were very, very poor, as any Native American would be. He was bullied. He never had much of a chance in life from an early age, but never let that bring him down. He was very good at athletics, he learned, and decided to enroll in baseball and many other sports and excelled in them. He got drafted to an amateur league of baseball out of high school, but joined the military, U.S. National Guard, to pay for his college and tuition. After he got enrolled, he was back in college playing baseball and was going to get drafted into the big leagues by the White Sox. But the day he was going to get drafted, in 1942, he was called up by the U.S. National Guard and activated for World War II. Keeble went with the 164th Division and practiced day and night. All these situations that he might never even come across. But all of his situations were for land. Because he's in North Dakota, he was nowhere near the coastline. They never thought of practicing any Pacific fighting. But their very first deployment was to Australia, where they would fight alongside many others that were white and did not respect him. On one occasion, during training, the medic of 164th, who was also Native American, had fallen down over a rock, and the combat sergeant that was training them had said they don't get breakfast or dinner the entire week. They could only have their lunch, which was a very unusual and cruel punishment because nobody else would receive that punishment for falling during a combat training exercise. Woody never held that against anybody and even gave up his own food to his men, feeling bad for not leading them in the right direction. In 1942, the United States launched an attack on Guadalcanal in an attempt to slow the Japanese. The U.S. Marine 1st Division was a solo attack on this and lost many lives and heavy casualties. The 164th was deployed to reinforce them and had never practiced very many Pacific training exercises. But once they got there, they set to work, and they lost very few casualties of their own and wiped out many Japanese forces, clearing the island. They were known for their legendary acts on that day and glorified into the United States Army. And nobody had been very prejudiced or racist toward them after this for quite a while. And he was a legend, and after World War II was returned home and decommissioned. But he went back to working without any further involvement with the U.S. Army, and people had soon forgotten of the legend of the 164th. And in the start of the Korean War, the 164th got reactivated and called into Alabama Fort Rucker. And a sergeant had said that he didn't want to single anyone out and force them to the front line, so he would make the men draw straws. Instead, Keeble said, "I will do it." And when asked why, Keeble said, "Somebody has to teach these men how to fight." And was described as a gentle giant by many people that had fought with him because he was caring and loving towards those he called brothers or friends, and would always have their back, but those who were his enemies, good luck to them, because he was an intense and ferocious fighter, which many considered very, very marksman-like, with a Browning automatic rifle, and had a golden arm to throw grenades in perfect places. After he went to the front line, he led the 1st American Infantry Platoon to take a series of hills, which would have been the last assault for the United Nations offensive in the war. The platoon had received heavy casualties on one hill and was pinned down by 4 enemy machine gun nests. Keeble, disregarding his own safety, left his cover, left his men, and charged the machine gun nests, and was wounded on his first run towards the first nest. Got back up and tossed a grenade into it, disabling every enemy inside, and then moved to the next, and then the next. And he took out 4 machine gun nests on his own and cleared that mountain and that hill for his men before they could move on. After this, he was wounded several times during this, so he was decommissioned from it. But his men didn't forget about what he did and his actions, and they nominated him for the Medal of Honor. He only received 1 Purple Heart, and the Medal of Honor nomination had been lost. So his men nominated him again, and for a second time, they lost his nomination. This was suspected because of racism and prejudice because he was Native American. He died at the age of 64 in Waubee, North Dakota, on January 28, 1982. He was never awarded anything more than the Silver Star or the Purple Heart, and 26 years after his death, President Bush had been told of his actions and held an immediate court meeting. Inside this, Bush said they needed to award this man for his actions because the injustice done to him was immensely because of racism, that he was a Native American and nobody had ever received one that was a Native American. So Bush, accompanied by Woodrow Keeble's stepson, Russell Keeble Hawkins, was on a podium and nationally declared Woodrow Keeble as an American hero and gave him posthumously the Medal of Honor in 2008, and gave his son all of the glory that Keeble never had gotten when he was alive. And though Keeble never received it when he was alive, he never held a grudge, he never complained, and many who knew him said he would never care if he got the Medal of Honor or not. He didn't do it for glory, he did it for safety of his men and protection of his people. The reason I chose this story and this topic is because this one Native American went through so many problems, so much diversity, hatred, racism, but didn't let it bring him down and decided to fight for a nation that didn't love him, that didn't respect him, and showed them that he loved them no matter what, and gave his life to them. After this battle, he actually had 81 pieces of shrapnel removed and said he still wanted to fight. They wouldn't let him, and they decommissioned him. Woodrow Keeble was one of the most legendary and iconic figures in American history that would never be remembered by the general public because many people forgot about his actions because he was from the 164th Division, which was a Native American division. And after being awarded the Medal of Honor, multiple ethnicities, Hispanics, blacks, Native Americans, joined the military because they were inspired by this man who had given everything. The way I did my research for the topic was by looking at all the primary sources I could find on him and going to people that had been with him and fought with him and finding what they said about him and what their stories were with him. I found a memorial site in Waubee, North Dakota, and called and asked them about any information they could give me that wasn't publicly known about Woodrow Keeble. And they said that he was regarded by many as the kindest man in the world with the biggest temper in the world. If you made this man mad, God have mercy on your soul, because he was a very ferocious fighter, but was a loving and giving person. The reason I chose to do a paper on this topic was because I enjoy writing essays, I enjoy writing papers, and I think this was the best way to explain all of his actions that he had done through the wars he has been in. If you wanted to know any more about this, I encourage you to look it up. He is an amazing person to look up, and he had caused many different changes in the military from his actions. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.